She walked into the Brussels courtroom alone, no lawyer by her side, just another witness in the case against Meridian Defense. When Judge Delacroix asked her to remove her jacket, standard procedure, no one expected what happened next. The small insignia on her sleeve shouldn't have been there. It belonged to a unit that had officially ceased to exist decades ago. The judge's face went pale as he whispered the words that changed everything, "That's not possible." In that moment, the trial stopped being about what Elise Moreau saw in the Balkans and became about who she really was, and what the European Union had been hiding for 25 years. Before we dive into this extraordinary story from the heart of European justice, tell me in the comments, from which city around the world are you watching today? Are you in Madrid, Stockholm, Toronto, or perhaps somewhere I've never imagined? If you believe that truth deserves to be heard, no matter how classified or dangerous, please subscribe to Silent Legends. We illuminate the stories of those who sacrificed in silence, fought battles that never appeared in history books, and carried secrets that could reshape our understanding of recent history. This is the story of Elise Moreau, and the day Brussels learned that some shadows never truly disappear. The European Court of Justice building in Brussels stood as a monument to continental unity and legal transparency. Its glass and steel architecture promised openness, a stark contrast to the shadows that would soon be exposed within its walls. Among the stream of attorneys, journalists, and observers entering for the Meridian Defense trial, one woman moved differently. Elise Moreau, 48 years old, walked with the measured steps of someone who had navigated far more dangerous territory than a courtroom. Her graying hair was pulled back simply, her clothing conservative but well chosen. Nothing about her appearance suggested she would soon become the focal point of one of the most extraordinary legal revelations in European history. The Meridian Defense scandal had dominated European headlines for months. The British-registered private military contractor stood accused of excessive force and civilian casualties during operations in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where EU peacekeeping forces maintained a continuing presence nearly 3 decades after the Dayton Accords. At the security checkpoint, the guards studied Elise's Belgian passport with routine thoroughness. "Purpose of your visit today, madam?" Witness for the prosecution, she replied in French, then repeated in English for the British security officer beside him. "Legal representation? I don't require any." Something in her quiet certainty made both guards study her more carefully. Her eyes held a quality they couldn't quite identify, the gaze of someone who had seen classified briefings, who had made decisions that affected nations rather than individuals. Courtroom 7 buzzed with the controlled tension that marked high-stakes international litigation. Meridian Defense's executives sat behind an impressive array of legal counsel representing multiple jurisdictions. Their confidence was evident in their relaxed postures and occasional conversations with their attorneys. Judge François Delacroix, a veteran of international criminal law who had presided over war crimes tribunals for 2 decades, entered with the bearing of someone accustomed to weighing matters of life and death. His experience with classified evidence and state secrets would prove crucial in the hours ahead. Chief Prosecutor Elena Vasquez rose as Elise was called to testify. A Spanish attorney whose reputation for exposing corporate malfeasance had made her the EU's choice to lead this sensitive case, she had spent months preparing witnesses whose testimony could dismantle Meridian's defense strategy. "Please state your name and occupation for the court," Vasquez began in English, the language chosen for these international proceedings. "Elise Moreau. I worked as a humanitarian aid coordinator in Bosnia-Herzegovina from 2010 to 2018. Meridian's lead counsel, Sir James Thornberry, immediately rose. His distinguished appearance and Queen's Counsel credentials projected the kind of authority that made juries trust his judgment. "Your Honor, we question Ms. Moreau's qualifications to testify about complex military operations in a post-conflict zone." Judge Delacroix's expression remained neutral. "The witness is here to testify about her direct observations, not to provide military analysis." "Proceed, Prosecutor Vasquez." For the next 90 minutes, Elise described discovering a village near Srebrenica that had been destroyed not by ethnic conflict, as officially reported, but by precision strikes that bore the distinctive characteristics of Meridian's operational methods. Her testimony was methodical, clinical in its precision, yet certain details carried emotional weight that resonated through the courtroom. She described helping elderly survivors search through rubble for photographs of grandchildren. She explained how the pattern of destruction suggested coordination rather than spontaneous violence. She presented digital photographs showing equipment fragments that matched Meridian's proprietary systems rather than the improvised weapons typically used by local militias. "And you're certain it was Meridian personnel you observed at the site afterward?" Vasquez asked. "Yes. They wore unmarked tactical gear, but their equipment configurations and operational procedures matched intelligence briefings I had seen regarding Meridian's activities in similar environments." Vasquez paused. "Intelligence briefings, Ms. Moreau?" For the first time, Elise hesitated. Humanitarian organizations often receive security briefings about active military contractors in their operational areas. The explanation was plausible, but something in her tone suggested layers of meaning that remained unexplored. Sir James Thornberry approached the witness stand with the confidence of someone prepared to dismantle testimony that threatened his client's freedom. "Ms. Moreau, you claim to have been at these specific coordinates on March 15, 2017. Is that correct?" "That is correct." He activated a digital display showing satellite imagery. These verified satellite images from that exact date show no humanitarian personnel in the area. In fact, they indicate active militia presence that would have made civilian aid work impossible. Elise studied the images calmly. "Those aren't the correct satellite passes for that date." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Delacroix leaned forward. "That's a serious allegation, Ms. Moreau. The satellite coverage for that grid reference occurs at 1547 Central European Time. These images are time-stamped 12/22. They're either from a different day or have been digitally altered." Thornberry's confidence wavered slightly. "Your Honor, the witness is speculating beyond her expertise." "I'm not speculating," Elise replied evenly. "The shadow angles in these images indicate midday sun position, not late afternoon. The KH-11 satellite that monitors this region follows a predictable orbital pattern. I'm familiar with its schedule." Judge Delacroix studied the images with renewed attention. "Sir James, can you verify the authenticity of this evidence?" After urgent consultation with his team, Thornberry responded, "We maintain these are accurate, Your Honor, but we can provide additional verification if required." "We'll examine that verification after a brief recess," the judge ruled. He turned to Elise. "Ms. Moreau, per standard court security protocol, I need you to remove your outer jacket before we continue." The request was routine. Witnesses were regularly asked to demonstrate they weren't carrying recording devices or weapons. But something in the judge's tone suggested heightened scrutiny following Elise's technical knowledge of classified satellite systems. The courtroom fell silent as Elise slowly stood and removed her conservative navy blazer, revealing a simple black shirt underneath. On the sleeve was a small insignia, an eclipse symbol with 3 stars arranged in a triangle, nearly invisible unless viewed directly. Judge Delacroix's face drained of color as recognition dawned. "That's not possible," he whispered, his voice carrying just far enough for the front rows to hear. Thornberry was immediately on his feet. "Your Honor, we request an immediate recess." The Meridian executives were no longer projecting confidence. One whispered urgently into a secure phone while another passed rapid notes to his legal team. "Court will recess until this afternoon," Judge Delacroix announced, his voice strained. "Ms. Moreau, you will remain available to this court." 2 hours later, Elise sat across from Judge Delacroix in his secure chambers. Prosecutor Vasquez and the court's security officer were the only others present. The atmosphere was tense with the weight of implications that extended far beyond a corporate liability case. "That insignia belongs to Shadow Eclipse," Judge Delacroix said, his voice tight with disbelief. "A joint European intelligence unit that was officially disbanded in 1998. "Officially disbanded, yes," Elise confirmed calmly. "Actually disbanded, no." "Who are you really, Ms. Moreau?" Instead of answering directly, Elise produced a thin document folder from her bag. "This is classified beyond normal court procedures, Your Honor. But given your previous service with the International Criminal Tribunal and current circumstances, I believe you have need to know." Judge Delacroix had indeed served as a military prosecutor during the Yugoslav tribunal, handling cases involving classified intelligence. His security clearance, though dormant, remained valid for extraordinary circumstances. As he read, his expression grew increasingly grave. "This indicates Shadow Eclipse was reactivated in 2003 for operations where the EU officially had no presence." "Correct," Elise confirmed. "And Meridian Defense was contracted to provide plausible deniability when operations required adjustment." "You're saying Meridian was hired to cover up EU intelligence operations?" "I'm saying that when Shadow Eclipse missions encountered complications, Meridian was authorized to sanitize evidence that could implicate European governments in unauthorized activities." Vasquez, who had been listening with growing comprehension, leaned forward. "The village you described in your testimony, that wasn't a contractor operation gone wrong. It was a cover-up operation." Elise nodded. "My team discovered evidence of arms smuggling that implicated several EU member states in violations of their own sanctions. When we prepared to report through proper channels, Meridian was ordered to ensure no evidence survived that could embarrass certain governments." "Your team?" the judge asked. "Shadow Eclipse Operational Unit 7. Specialized in intelligence gathering under humanitarian cover in post-conflict zones." The weight of the revelation settled over the room. What had appeared to be a straightforward case against a rogue military contractor was actually the exposure of a decades-long European intelligence operation that had never been acknowledged to exist. "Why come forward now?" Vasquez asked. "Why not when it happened?" Elise's composure showed its first crack. "I tried through proper channels. The evidence was classified, witnesses were reassigned or retired, official reports were redacted beyond recognition." She removed a small pill bottle from her pocket, swallowing a tablet without water. "And because I don't have much time left." The prosecutor's eyes widened in understanding. "You're ill. Terminal. 6 months, possibly less. Exposure to chemical weapons during a 2015 operation in Syria. The European Health Authority won't acknowledge treatment because the operation officially never occurred." Judge Delacroix closed the folder. "Ms. Moreau, are you prepared to testify under oath about Shadow Eclipse operations, knowing this could expose classified European intelligence activities?" "Your Honor, 17 civilians died in that village to protect the reputations of 3 EU member states. 4 of my team members were eliminated by Meridian to ensure their silence. Someone must speak for those who cannot." When court reconvened that afternoon, the atmosphere had been transformed. Military officers in dress uniforms occupied several rows. Government attorneys had joined Meridian's defense team. Security had tripled, with armed personnel at every entrance. Judge Delacroix addressed the packed courtroom with gravity appropriate to the moment. "Before we continue, new information has come to light that expands the scope of these proceedings. This court will now be operating under enhanced security protocols." A new attorney stood, Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann from the European Union's legal service. "Your Honor, Ms. Moreau is attempting to disclose classified information that could endanger ongoing operations and personnel safety across multiple member states." "Dr. Zimmermann," the judge replied, "this court has jurisdiction over matters involving potential war crimes and civilian casualties. Classification cannot shield criminal behavior from legal scrutiny." Elise was recalled to the witness stand, noticeably weaker than that morning but resolute. Her military bearing had fully emerged, replacing any pretense of civilian status. "Commander Moreau," Judge Delacroix began formally, "please explain your knowledge of the events in question." Shadow Eclipse Unit 7 was deployed to Bosnia in March 2017 to investigate reports of arms trafficking that violated EU sanctions against certain regional actors. Our mission parameters were intelligence gathering only, no direct action authorized. She produced a secured tablet displaying operational photographs. What we discovered was a network involving defense contractors from 3 EU member states selling advanced weapon systems to militias that those same states had publicly condemned. The images were damning: European-manufactured weapons in the hands of fighters who should have had no access to such equipment, GPS coordinates showing delivery routes that passed through EU-controlled checkpoints, documentation bearing official seals from defense ministries. When my team prepared to report these findings through established intelligence channels, we were ordered to delay transmission pending operational security review. 48 hours later, Meridian forces arrived with orders to sanitize the site. Sanitize how? Vasquez asked. Complete destruction of the village, elimination of all witnesses, and fabrication of evidence suggesting ethnic violence rather than arms trafficking activity. The courtroom was absolutely silent as Elise continued. When my team objected to targeting civilians, Meridian's commander informed us that authorization came from the highest levels and that our mission parameters had been revised. What happened to your team members who objected? Elise's voice remained steady, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the witness stand. Lieutenant Sarah Dubois, eliminated while attempting to evacuate children. Captain Marcus Weber, executed while providing medical aid to wounded villagers. Major and Laurent, my second-in-command, shot while confronting Meridian leadership about their orders. With each name, she placed a military dog tag on the rail before her. They died believing they were protecting European values. Instead, they died protecting European lies. From the gallery, an older man in a general's uniform stood at attention. 2 other officers joined him, followed by several civilians who appeared to be government officials. The spontaneous tribute continued until nearly half the courtroom stood in silent recognition. The trial's final phase unfolded over several days of closed sessions as European officials grappled with revelations that threatened to expose decades of unauthorized intelligence operations. Elise's health deteriorated visibly, but she maintained her testimony through increasingly frequent medical breaks. Sir James Thornberry's cross-examination strategy had completely shifted. Rather than challenging her credibility, he focused on limiting the scope of Meridian's legal exposure while preserving his client's possibility of plea arrangements. Commander Moreau, did Meridian personnel act on their own initiative, or were they following specific orders from European authorities? They were following explicit orders. I have communications logs confirming authorization from deputy directors in 3 EU member state intelligence services. The evidence was overwhelming. Satellite imagery confirmed Elise's account of the village destruction. Communications intercepts revealed coordination between Meridian and European officials. Financial records showed payments from classified budgets to Meridian accounts. After a week of proceedings, Meridian's executives requested private consultation with prosecutors. The plea negotiations that followed were conducted in secure facilities with representatives from multiple European governments present. The final agreement acknowledged Meridian's guilt in violating international law while carefully limiting the exposure of classified European operations. The company agreed to substantial compensation for victims' families and cooperation in identifying all responsible parties within agreed parameters. Judge Delacroix's final ruling addressed the broader implications. This court cannot ignore that classification and state secrecy were used to conceal criminal behavior. While national security requires some operations remain classified, that classification cannot become a shield for war crimes or a justification for eliminating witnesses. He turned to where Elise sat, now clearly weakened by her illness but maintaining perfect posture. The court acknowledges the extraordinary courage of Commander Moreau in bringing these matters to light at considerable personal cost. 3 months after the trial concluded, Elise was moved to a secure medical facility in Brussels where her status as a decorated intelligence officer finally granted access to the treatment that had been denied for years. Her condition was too advanced for recovery, but proper palliative care eased her final months. Prosecutor Vasquez visited regularly, often bringing updates on the continuing investigation that Elise's testimony had triggered. Several mid-level officials in European intelligence services had been quietly reassigned. New oversight protocols for private military contractors were implemented across EU member states. Was it worth it? Vasquez asked during one visit. Elise looked through the window toward the Brussels skyline where the European Parliament building was visible in the distance. 17 civilians and 4 of my people died to protect the reputation of institutions that were supposed to represent their values. Now their families know the truth. Yes, it was worth it. 2 weeks before Elise died, a small ceremony was held in a secure conference room within EU headquarters. Family members of the fallen Shadow Eclipse operators were present, having been granted temporary clearances to hear the full truth about their loved ones' deaths. For the first time in years, they learned that their family members had died as heroes rather than the failure narrative they had been given. Each family received posthumous citations acknowledging their loved one's service and sacrifice. Elise attended in a wheelchair, too weak to stand but determined to see this final mission completed. After the formal presentations, she spoke briefly with each family, sharing memories that had been locked away behind classification for years. Commander Elise Moreau died quietly 6 weeks later. Her obituary in Le Soir mentioned her distinguished service in international humanitarian work with no reference to Shadow Eclipse or intelligence operations. But at Everest Cemetery in Brussels, her headstone bore the Eclipse insignia beneath her name, no longer a secret symbol, but a recognized mark of service. The changes that followed were subtle but significant. The European Parliament established new oversight committees for intelligence cooperation. Private military contractor regulations were strengthened with unprecedented accountability measures. Several classified programs dating back decades were reviewed and either reformed or terminated. At the European Union Military Staff Headquarters, a secure memorial wall was updated to include previously unacknowledged service members. Elise's photograph was placed among them, her expression serious but eyes clear with the determination that had driven her final mission. In a small apartment in Brussels, Prosecutor Vasquez maintained a secure file on the Meridian case. As she sealed the final documents, her phone rang with news of another contractor, another operation requiring investigation, another whistleblower seeking justice. She answered immediately, Elise's example fresh in her mind. "This is Vasquez." The voice was hesitant. "I served with Commander Moreau. She said if anything happened, you were someone who could be trusted." Vasquez straightened in her chair. "I'm listening." Elise Moreau never sought recognition or monuments. She simply carried the truth through years of official denial until she found the courage to speak when speaking mattered most. Her final mission proved that some shadows, once illuminated, can never return to darkness. Because that's what legends do. They don't demand to be remembered. They ensure that others are never forgotten, and that truth, however delayed, ultimately finds its voice. Have you ever met someone who sacrificed everything for a principle larger than themselves? Share their story in the comments below. Thank you for watching Silent Legends. If this story moved you, subscribe and help us honor those who served in silence but whose courage echoes through the generations. Disclaimer. This video is a fictional narrative created for emotional, inspirational, and entertainment purposes only. The characters, events, and situations portrayed are entirely imaginary and should not be interpreted as factual representations of real-life individuals or events. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real situations is purely coincidental. This content is not intended to offend, deceive, or cause harm. Viewer discretion is advised.